you started with space, and then what made you want to branch out into general policy, or to build an app that or website that's kind of more widespread rather than just the narrow focus of space policy?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I don't know, saying American democracy is broken, it seems too easy to just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that's true. Um, so I was reading this study that came out just this past week, and millennials are losing faith very rapidly in democracy, like as an institution. And I mean, obviously, I didn't see the study at the time, but I saw how involved people were getting with politics and just how unresponsive politics was to people. And I am a firm believer in democracy. Whether or not you agree with me politically, I think you should have your voice heard. I think you should get the opportunity to try to make a change. And so we just sort of, Trent and I, my co-founder, thought, hey, what if we tried to address the issues with American democracy by getting people involved in an effective manner?
Yeah, I think it's good, assuming, so this hypothetically down the line, this is working by the people, I mean, is working.
Yeah.
That's something where there's there's a lot of smart people out there in different walks of life, whether it be in universities or just in private companies or wherever, that could help people, and their ideas could help people. And either now they're at the point where they're like, well, I can say this, but it doesn't matter anyway because like nobody's going to hear, or that's kind of the social media phenomenon, right? Everybody has an opinion,
Yeah.
and so good ones get sort of drowned out in the endless timeline of nonsense and memes. And then by the same token, and so that prevents people from wanting to do this. But if you have a way, because I don't think people who just are in this to troll will want to be on your site. Like it's too much.
Yeah.
It's easy enough for somebody who wants to be active to get involved, but it's by the same token, it's like just that smidge too hard for somebody who just wants to do it to troll and have a laugh. Like for them to be like, oh yeah, this is worth my time. Let me go troll a candidate for office. Like it's because you actually have to do the scheduling and set up the meeting and
Yeah.
know what
And,
you want to talk about. And so,
well, so too, we also, a big part of by the people actually is we verify everybody on the platform, right? So
well,
when you
that
sign up,
there you
we
go.
actually, yeah, we make you send us a picture of your photo ID, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's secure, right? I've worked for a bank in the past doing security stuff. We hold on to the ID for less than a day, but it's super important to a lot of the candidates we talk to before building the product that they know who they're talking to, right? They know they're not just wasting their time talking to somebody across the country when they could be spending that time talking to constituents.
Sure, and I feel like that would be a big thing for them because they they're busy people running campaigns, and the shore is a very complicated and time consuming task. And so any sort of time wasted, especially if you look at from the standpoint of a competitive person, it's like I wasted 5 minutes talking to this person and my opponent is using that 5 minutes in a better way. And so I think that's important for you guys from a product standpoint, like you pointed out, that the candidate would want that. And so for that reason, that along with the other stuff that you've told me both now and in our previous conversations and all that, I think there's a real promise about what you guys are doing. And I know, like even just people that I've had on the podcast before, like Jason Ford, whose episode I think came out today at the time of recording this. He's involved in several small political things. He would love something like that. Sammy and Izzy, who were the first episode, I think would love something like that as well. And so you have people, I talk to people at least that I know would be very interested in something like that. I think it would, those in it for the right reasons would make the time to do the research, I think. And I think there would be a lot more productive conversations rather than just yelling. If by the people were to take off and expand kind of to where you guys are seeing. So I definitely think it has some promise for sure. But I think America's almost needing something like that. I think people are tired of yelling at each other. That's why one of the reasons why like Joe Rogan's podcast is so popular is because even when they mess up, it's just the conversation. They're trying to get to an answer of something, or like just have a conversation about an issue. And so it's those sorts of things are starting to resonate with people, I think, a little bit more than just people yelling at each other on the news or wherever. So
Exactly. Yeah.
is that sort of what you found when you've talked to people about the idea as well?
Yeah, for sure. I will say, obviously, you know, we are super optimistic for what we're doing. That said, like, we haven't totally figured out, like, you know, we have a little bit less than 100 users right now, right? Obviously, we're still going through this process of how do we build this in such a way that people want to engage with it, and then it just sort of spreads like wildfire, right? And it's actually effective. And honestly, right, like that's the process, that's the pain of building a startup, is figuring out, you know, which levers you need to press to get the growth you need to really have an impact at the nation level and maybe eventually at the global level.
Yeah. So right now, are most of your users local? Do you have candidates on there right now?
Yeah, so we have about 15 candidates on here. We have profiles for hundreds of candidates, but those are ones we brought in, right? They haven't signed up for the platform yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we have about 60 or 70 voters signed up for the platform as well. They lean towards South Carolina, but you know, we have people in California, Ohio, Virginia, Louisiana, kind of all over.
Is it growing? You launched recently, right?
Yeah, so we launched a month ago. It definitely has been growing. That said, we've been really focused on the election, and there's only 2 weeks left in the election. So we only have so much more time we can grow from the election. But pretty quickly after the election, we're going to be bringing in support for organizations and support for endorsements. And with the conversations we've had with a lot of these organizations, we think this could be a really great avenue for growth, right? Where not only do we facilitate these meetings between organizations and their elected officials, but we are also a platform to collect people supporting the legislation that you're trying to pass or the cause that you are behind in a way that change.org, it's so generic, right? And it doesn't, there's not as much power behind, oh, great, there's a change.org petition. But if we're pairing it with, hey, look at these hundreds of people in your district, look at this map we have of the hundreds of people in your district who support this legislation, right? Now let's talk about the legislation. There's a lot more power to that conversation.
Definitely, with the map, the visual, I think gets the power there. Do you worry that, like when you talk about organizations having access to the platform, do you worry at all that the candidates would cater to the organizations more than the individuals on the platform, from the standpoint of like, your platform will go down a similar path to, on a much smaller scale, obviously, but a similar path to Washington, where it used to be like when the Constitution was first signed and everything, like they go out and talk to the individual people, and now it's about super PACs and all that stuff. Do you worry that that's where by the people will head if you allow organizations on there, or do you have like stopgaps in place for that, or kind of have you
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
about
it's a
it?
really good question. I have a lot of worries about the direction this could go,
Hmm.
right? Like building a platform. I mean, we've seen how Facebook has just been very toxic for politics, and we absolutely do not want that happening with By the People. Um, so that said, I do imagine organizations will be on the platform. I mean, we want organizations on the platform, but in like the negative way you're, I guess, suggesting, like there will probably be some of that, but at the same time, we're now giving normal people the same tools that these organizations have, right? And effective ways to make change that they just didn't have access to before. And so I think we're really going to be tilting the power more in the direction of your average person than, these corporate interests.